Hello YouTube and welcome to the next route learning video. On today's video I'm going to be revisiting the West Coast Main Line Trent Valley route and driving a Class 390 Pendolino between just south of Rugby and Stafford, which is a distance of around 52 miles. So we're currently sat here at a red signal just south of Rugby Station, and then I'm going to be driving through to Stafford on a non-stop journey. The scenario that I'm using here is from DP Simulation, from the free DP Simulation scenario pack for this route, and the name of the scenario is 1F11 707 London Euston to Liverpool Lime Street. This is a route which in the past I had significant performance issues with. Indeed, I did make a video on this route between Stafford and Rugby on a stopping service on the release day. However, unfortunately there was some quite noticeable lag which people pointed out to me. But now with the new PC, with the improved graphics settings, the route is running a lot smoother than it did before, and so I'm hoping that you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of this video than the previous video. The Class 390 Pendolino has been in service since the 23rd of July 2002 and was manufactured by Alstom, with Fiat manufacturing the tilting system. The Class 390s were built at Washwood Heath in England and also Savigliano in Italy. They're known as Pendolino electric multiple units and were constructed between 2001 to 2004, and again another batch constructed between 2009 and 2012. A total of 57 Pendolinos have been constructed, with one having been written off in the Grey Rig derailment. Grey Rig you can indeed find on the West Coast Main Line over Shap add-on. The maximum speed of these trains is 125 miles per hour, with a design speed of 140 miles per hour. However, they're not currently authorised to travel up to that speed, as it's been deemed in Britain that to do so you must use an in-cab signalling system. In fact, you need in-cab signalling for any speed limits above 125 miles per hour. The weight of each unit is 466 tonnes for the 9-coach units, and for the 11-coach units it's 567 tonnes. Indeed, today we're travelling with a 9-coach unit. The total power output is 6,840 horsepower, and with the 11-coach unit it's 7,980 horsepower. Once in the cab of the Class 390, I'm already completely set up for departure simply because we're starting on the main line, and indeed this train would have come up from London. As a result of that, the train is already in forward and the headlights are already turned on, and they're the only two things you really need to do to set up the train ready for departure. So just to quickly go through just some of the cab controls, over here we have the combined traction and brake controller, and you can see there the off position in the middle is when the train is in idle or coasting, and then you've got 4 steps of power below that as you pull the handle towards the driver, and indeed going the other way there are 6 steps of braking before the emergency setting. And on this journey today I'm probably going to need to go right up to step 6 on a couple of points so that I can slow down in time for certain speed limits. Next to that we have the speed set control, which is controlled by the C key, so that acts as cruise control and ensures that I don't break any speed limits. However, if there are any downhill sections, then the speed set in the Pendolino won't stop you from exceeding the speed limit at that point, and you still need to manually use the brakes to ensure that doesn't happen. There are no major gradients on the Trent Valley section of the West Coast Main Line, so that won't be a problem on this journey today. Then just above that you can see that we have a computer screen there which actually has a digital speed readout on it, and that's the speed readout that I'm going to be going by when travelling along in this train, simply because it's very difficult to read the analog speedometer, which you can see just over there now to the right of the screen, when you're zoomed back in the cab. Just to go a bit further around, you can see we've got the AWS reset there, and we've also got the main brake gauges in front of us. And that's pretty much all of the controls that we need to go through. Just to also mention, we've got the horn control down here, which unfortunately doesn't have an independent 2-tone horn, so if I press spacebar you get one tone and then the other tone at the very end. Now that I've gone through that, we're pretty much ready to start. Now that I'm back in the cab of the Pendolino, I now need to press tab to request permission to pass the signal ahead at danger, as for some reason it doesn't clear from red to yellow. So I've just pressed tab and we've now been given permission to pass the signal at danger, so I can now start the train moving as we head towards the platform at Rugby. At this point I now know that we're cleared right up to the signal at the other end of the platform. Normally at Rugby we would actually go through on the first line, where I believe the speed limit is 125 miles per hour for tilting trains, but as it says in the briefing for this particular scenario, there's engineering works both here at Rugby and also at Nuneaton, which means that I'm going to be going through slower platforms, and so I'm going to have to brake a lot more than usual, particularly at Nuneaton, so that I can slow down in time for the speed limit there. At this point I'm not going to go above about 40 miles per hour, so now we're doing 40. I've just moved the power handle back into the off position and I'm allowing the train to coast at this point. So the starting speed limit here is 125 miles per hour, though it is shortly going down to 60 and then 40 miles per hour, and we've got around 52 miles to go to Stafford. At this point I'm just sounding the horn, as I know that there's men working on the track, and in real life drivers would always sound their horn where there are people working on the track. Indeed, you can see there that there is actually a stop sign, meaning that trains are not permitted to proceed through the first line platform here. I can now see that the signal at the end of the platform here at Rugby is displaying a yellow aspect. I'm not sure at this point whether it's a single or a double yellow, so I'll know that as we get closer to the signal. It appears that the signal is displaying a single yellow aspect, and the speed limit as we enter this point here and cross to the right is dropping to 40 miles per hour. I'm not going to accelerate at this point much, just because I've got to drive with caution, having just received a single yellow signal. Immediately after crossing the points here, the speed limit is going up to 125 miles per hour. We just had a repeater just above us there, which you may have noticed, and indeed on this route we see what's known as green repeaters, so that was indicating that the next signal is displaying a green aspect. So at that point I then started to accelerate up towards the current speed limit. So now at this point I'm going to continue to accelerate up towards 125 miles per hour. And I'm going to apply cruise control once we reach 124, and that should hold us at that speed. The lines now diverging to the left are the lines towards Birmingham International and Birmingham New Street. I just temporarily shut off the power there as we went through a neutral section. Although neutral section functionality hasn't been simulated on the Pendolino in Train Simulator, it certainly is there in real life. So you may have noticed a bit of lag there around the Rugby area, and indeed there will be a couple of patches of lag on this journey, but on the whole it's going to perform far better than it did in my previous video on this route, and currently the frame rate is a nice and smooth 30 frames a second. I say that, the frame rate actually when practicing this was higher, but indeed I've actually got Bandicam to lock the frame rates at 30 frames a second while I'm recording, because I found otherwise the frame rate can go up and down a bit too much, and the picture doesn't always look smooth, not through lag, but just through the changing frame rates when it changes so rapidly. So I've just cut the power by 2 notches and just applied cruise control at this point as we're doing 124 miles per hour, and so that should hold us comfortably at this speed. I'd just like to say this is one of my favourite routes for Train Simulator, purely down to the amount of detail that Thompson and Keith Ross put into it. However, I do feel that the route is a little bit too linear, because you can literally drive between Rugby and Stafford around 50 miles with no real alternate routes to drive. And indeed, if you're driving an express train and want to follow a realistic timetable, then there's only around 2 trains a day, I believe it is, which stop at both Rugby and Stafford on this route, which means you either have to start outside of Rugby Station at a red signal like we did on this scenario, or you end up finishing at Stafford, where you end up travelling 125 miles per hour to the end of the scenario. So this is the first of several videos I've got planned in the coming weeks. I think I may have mentioned in a previous video that now with the new PC I'd like to try and make at least one video on every route, even if it's a route that's been covered before. In fact, most of the routes I've now covered within the UK anyway, just to really demonstrate how much better they can look in higher graphics settings and with the frame rate running much smoother. Edinburgh to Glasgow and the Isle of Wight are 2 routes which I'm actually quite keen on covering, because I believe that I can record in 60 frames a second on those 2 routes, and I think it would be really good to get some 60 frame per second videos up onto YouTube. So I'm looking into trying to do that and seeing what performance I get on both the routes. That's something you can expect to see within the next few weeks. And something else, quite a big project which I'm planning on doing, will be the Newcastle to Edinburgh route. I had many problems with that on the previous PC, and I haven't tried it on this new PC yet, so I'm very interested to see how it performs, and also if I'll be able to actually build a scenario without the scenario editor crashing. So you can also hopefully expect to see a Newcastle to Edinburgh video coming up within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would say. What I'm looking out for along here now is where a 4-track running resumes. Indeed, a track will diverge from the line that we're currently on to our left. And then shortly after that, we're going to get a double yellow signal. As we reach the double yellow signal at around 125 miles per hour, we're then 1 mile from a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. Just before Nuneaton Station. So as soon as we reach that signal, or basically as soon as I see that signal, I'm going to have to brake hard to ensure that the train has slowed down in time for that speed reduction. With the Morpeth board there warning of a 75 speed limit for trains diverging to the left, I'm assuming that that is for the junction which I mentioned where the track comes from or diverges from our track to the left, so I'm just looking out for that now so that I can keep a close eye on the signals to know when to brake. Track is now diverging to the left, and I believe it's the next signal which will be displaying a double yellow aspect, so I'm just looking now. Indeed it is. So at this point I'm now braking, and I'm now into step 5 braking, which should hopefully be adequate. The 40 mile per hour speed limit comes into force as we reach the next signal, which will be displaying a single yellow aspect. Here at Nuneaton there is a bit more lag, unfortunately. Seems that the game engine doesn't like this quite so much. I just temporarily increased the braking up to step 6 because I wasn't sure I was slowing down enough, but now it seems that I already was, and I probably slowed down slightly too early there. But then the 40 speed limit is coming into force very quickly now, so I've now released the brakes and I'm allowing the train to coast, and as we cross this point the speed limit drops to 40 miles per hour. You can see there's a stop sign on the fast line, indicating that trains are not permitted to proceed through there at present. I'm now going to start slowing down because I'm not sure what aspect the next signal is displaying, and the previous signal that we passed was displaying a single yellow aspect. I can now see our signal and it is in fact displaying a green aspect. The speed limit here is now going up to 75 miles per hour, however it will shortly be dropping down to 60 miles per hour as we rejoin the fast line, so I'm not going to accelerate above 60 at this point. The line to Birmingham via Water Orton is now diverging on the left, and I've just shut off the power here at 58 miles per hour to ensure that we don't end up breaking the speed limit. I can accelerate up towards the speed limit of 125 miles per hour once again as we pass over this next AWS ramp. So I'm now in full power, accelerating up towards 125. There will be a speed change coming up in a little while just before we pass through the next station, which is Atherstone. And so there's no clear landmark that I could see as to where to brake for that. Sort of a bit of guesswork, but there is a right-hand curve coming up with a signal on it and an overbridge, and I'm hoping that I can judge this right because there are so many bridges on this route. It's actually quite difficult to know which bridge is the right bridge, so I'm hoping that I can get the right curve to be able to slow down in time for a speed reduction back down to 100 miles per hour. I've now applied cruise control once again to ensure that I don't break the speed limit, and now I'm just trying to look out for a right-hand curve with both a signal and an overbridge at the end of it, and if I see one then I'm going to brake straight away for the upcoming 100 speed limit. I believe that this is the curve I was referring to. There's a signal, there's the bridge, so at this point I'm now making a hard brake application. In fact, I've gone up to step 6 of braking to ensure that I slow down to 100 in time. I've now applied cruise control at 99 miles per hour, and in a moment we will be passing through Atherstone Station. Now that we've passed through Atherstone, the speed limit is going up to 115 miles per hour, and then very quickly after that back up to 125 miles per hour at the next speed board, which we're now passing. And now there will be no further speed changes until we've reached the other side of Rugeley, which should be around 10 minutes from now. One thing I will mention is that I'm noticing there's a lot more lag on this route when recording than I had when practicing this journey, so I do apologise for the lag that I'm receiving. Again, it comes down to the rather poorly optimised game engine. I've now applied cruise control once again and we're doing 125 miles per hour. I can now just leave the train with cruise control on, doing 124 to 125 quite comfortably until we've passed Rugeley Station, and I'll need to start thinking about braking for some upcoming speed limits. We're now passing Polesworth Station, which is probably the least used station on the entire West Coast Main Line. The only platform which is still open is in the northbound direction, so this direction, and that was the platform to our left, because we've got the two northbound or down lines as they're known on this side, and then the two tracks to our right hand side are the up lines, which are in the London direction, because in the UK all lines going towards London, whether they're going up or down the country, it doesn't matter. If the line is going towards London, it's the up line, and if it's going away from London, it's the down line. So there is only one platform open at Polesworth, which is on the down slow next to us, and it receives simply, well, literally one train a day, and that's the only service that it receives. And I can't imagine that there's that many people that would use Polesworth Station to use that train, knowing that they can't actually come back again later on in the day should they want to. There's no train stop in the other direction. We're now passing Tamworth Station, and at this point we've got 23.5 miles to go to Stafford, and I only realised when we were right on it that there was actually a neutral section just before the station. As mentioned earlier, neutral section functionality hasn't been simulated on this particular train, but I still like to try and move the power handle back down to idle if I remember or if I see the warning to do so. So Tamworth Station that we just passed through, like Litchfield, which is the next station we're going to pass through, has both a high level and a low level platform, and we went through the low level platforms. The high level platforms are not, well, the tracks there, I don't believe they're actually linked to the West Coast Main Line in any way, and the trains that are using the high level platforms are taking completely different routes. Someone was asking me recently about plans for any further German videos, so indeed, yes, I am going to make some more German videos. Haven't quite got round to it yet. There's a number of journeys I'd like to make. One that's been quite requested is a journey from Munich to Augsburg in a high-speed train such as an ICE, so I'm certainly going to be covering that. I would also like to cover the full-length run between Munich and Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which I have covered a short run on that route, but I haven't covered the full route yet, so I think that would be an interesting one to cover. In addition to that, I'm also looking at the Köln to Koblenz route, as well as Munich to Rosenheim, so I've got several routes there. And also Mannheim to Karlsruhe. I was just trying to remember the name of that route. So there's 5 routes in total. In addition to that, I'd also like to start covering some journeys on the Frankfurt S-Bahn, which is from an add-on which was released by Just Trains, and I just think that that's quite a realistic looking route, but the train is really difficult to get the hang of driving. That being said, I think it would make a nice change on this channel, so I'm hoping to cover that quite soon. In fact, I might make that my next German video. We'll see how it goes and whether I can get enough practice on that route really to be able to drive accurately and realistically. We're now passing through Litchfield Trent Valley Station, so again we're going through the low level platforms with the high level platforms above us, and Litchfield is the term or one of the ends of the cross city line through Birmingham between Redditch and Litchfield. Something else I'm still trying to consider is how to cover other train-related games on this channel. Indeed, I bought one just last week, which is Train Fever, which I'm assuming that some of you will have played, and that's a really transportation-based strategy game with a big focus on railways, and I'm still trying to get the hang of how to play that. But that's certainly a game that looks good to me, and from what I've done on it so far, it seems like it's a pretty good game. So I'm still looking at how to really cover games like that on this channel, but I just think it would really make quite an interesting change. So any strategy games like Train Fever, Railroad Tycoon, quite old. I think Chris Sawyer's Locomotion is another one that I can think of, and also A-Train, which from what I understand is quite a good Japanese series. I certainly remember playing the original A-Train, which was a DOS-based game all the way back in the mid-1990s. When my dad first got a PC, I remember he bought it from the shop that was then known as Electronics Boutique, that's today known as Games, so that's really starting to show my age now, I must say. But yeah, I just remember playing that back then and how it was all very black and white, monochrome, and I quite enjoyed playing it in all honesty, so I'm interested to see what the new iterations of A-Train are like. Just to say that I did actually notice the last neutral section that we passed through, which is why you just saw me idle the power and then move the power back up. Of course, one thing to mention, with when using cruise control is that as soon as you move the power handle, the speed set will turn off, and as a result of that, you then need to reapply the cruise control once you've moved the power handle back into the desired position. We're now passing through Rugeley Station, so what I'm looking out for now is a flashing double yellow signal. At that point we've then got 1 mile to go to an upcoming 85 mile per hour speed limit, and 1¼ miles to go to an upcoming 65 miles per hour speed limit. So once I've passed the flashing double yellow signal, or should I say once I reach it, at that moment I'm then going to brake between steps 4 and 5 to bring our speed down. You can now see the flashing double yellow signal coming up just ahead. So I've now reset the AWS and I'm now braking initially into step 4, and then I will go up to step 5 in a moment if I don't feel that I'm slowing down quick enough. I've now increased the braking to step 5 to try and ensure that I am down below 85 miles per hour in time for the upcoming 85 limit. So we're now doing 85, I've temporarily released the brakes, and now I'm going to reapply them again just as we reach the board here. So I'm now slowing for the upcoming 65 speed limit. Speed limit has now dropped to 65 as we cross this point to the left here. The lines now diverging to the right go towards Stoke-on-Trent and Manchester Piccadilly. The speed limit is now going up to 100 miles per hour after this junction, and although I am certain that the next signal will be clear, unfortunately due to the way that it works in Train Simulator and the fact that I just had a solid single yellow aspect, I now have to continue slowing down as if the next signal is red until I can see otherwise. I can now see that the next signal is displaying a green aspect, so I'm now accelerating straight back up towards 100 miles per hour, and I will apply cruise control at around 98 to 99 miles per hour. We're now passing through the only tunnel which we passed through on this journey today. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I do intend on putting that in as a caption in this video. At this point we've now got around 4½ miles to go to Stafford. What I'm looking out for along here now is a warning for an upcoming 85 mile per hour speed limit, and at that warning I'm going to brake lightly, as before the 85 speed limit there is a 90 speed limit. In fact, that warning's around a mile from the 85 if I remember correctly. So I'm going to brake down to 90, release the brakes and allow the train to coast until I need to brake further for the 85 speed limit. Now got the warning for the upcoming 85 limit, so I'm just braking lightly, as I mentioned. I'm just going to go up to step 3 of braking now, just to ensure that I do slow down in time, as I'm not sure exactly what point the 90 mile per hour speed limit will begin. We're now entering the 90 speed zone, and I'm doing 90 miles per hour. I'm leaving the power handle in the off position, as there's no need for any power at this point. And indeed, we're going to be coasting all of the way into Stafford, apart from when I need to brake, of course. So what I'm looking out for now is an overbridge which is coming up just ahead, and at that point I'm then going to brake lightly for the upcoming 85 speed limit. Now doing a comfortable 85 miles per hour, the power handle is back in idle. The 85 limit was 1¼ mile, should I say, from Stafford Station, and now that we've just had a double yellow signal, that's 3/4 mile from an upcoming 25 mile per hour speed limit, so I do now have the brakes on. Currently in step 4, but I'm going up to step 5, as I'm not sure I'm slowing down quite quick enough. In fact, I'm increasing further to step 6 of braking to ensure that I am slowing down quick enough for the upcoming 25 limit, which comes into force as we cross a point to the left. And now cutting the braking right back. Just reapplied slightly, and now we're doing just below 25. I actually thought it was the point before it is. I thought it was the point we just crossed where the speed limit came into force. It's actually this point just coming up here. So now coming into Stafford Station, I'm going to allow the train to coast, and I'm aiming to stop towards the other end of the platform at the sign that says VT 9 and 11. That stands for Virgin Trains, 9 and 11 coach trains stop there. You can now see the stop signs coming up. It says VT 810 and VT 9 and 11, and that's roughly the correct place to stop. I should now be stopped in the right place. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope that you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also please don't forget that you can find me on Facebook for the latest updates, the link of which is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you for watching.